started. First of all, Thursday I was with clergy session of PCIC, and there's two events that you will want to know about that are coming up. One is the delegate assembly. That's where we decide what are we going to be. And these are churches that come together, all different denominations, all different social agencies as well, coming together and saying, who are we going to be, especially as we move towards the next few months of political issues, right? And so that's in 2 Sundays from now in the afternoon, right over by my house, kind of at Our Lady of Sorrows Parish. And so I invite you to come to that. A couple weeks after that is our accountability session. Now, I don't know if you remember this last year, but it was incredible. There were a whole bunch of you there, but there were a whole bunch of people from all different churches, and we filled Catalina High School auditorium. I mean, filled it full. Not just with people, but with energy and with political movement. And I invite you to come to that and be part of that. That's when we look at the candidates and we say, will you vote this way? And we expect them to say yes or no, so we know clearly, are they with us or against us? Are they going to move with us, and how can we help them? So if you'd like one of these, I invite you to come to those two things. Second of all, I want to talk a little bit more about Casa Maria. Casa Maria is an amazing place. It's a magical place. It's a little hole in the wall about as big as this staging. And they cook. And people come in and they find grace and love and peace there. And I invite you to be part of that. Here's where I need you to be part of that. We have 2 coordinating positions in that, where we need new volunteers. We need someone who will buy and bring the food to that space. The candy cans that we collect all that money in, we use that money to be able to support Casa Maria. We make that chili once a month, but we bring stuff all the time over there for them. And so I need someone who will help coordinate and be the one who buys that food. I also need somebody who will help coordinate the volunteers and help make sure that there are always enough people there. We're running short of volunteers. The food gets cooked all the time, but we need to step back into a more active role in that ministry. So if you'd like to be part of that, I'd love for you to do that. We fed yesterday, and so our next feeding is September the 8th. Yes, September the 8th. And if you'd like to help coordinate that, I'd love to do it. Plus, I need a bunch of people to say, I'll go and feed. I'll be there. It's about a 3 to 4 hour commitment. We'd love for you to be there, and we'll squeeze together in that little tiny space, and we will have an amazing time. So if you can do that, come see me, see the boat, come talk to the office. Love to have you there as part of that. So our scripture today is from Ephesians. You might have noticed I've been talking out of Ephesians for the last little while, and there's a reason for this. Ephesians was written in the latter part of the 1st century or the beginning of the 2nd century by who I call pseudo-Paul. All right? Because he's not Paul. He's writing much later than Paul. But he's writing as if he is Paul. And there's a reason for that. We don't know what the reason is. We don't know what's going on in Ephesus, that he has problems. We know he has problems. In this scripture it names it. The dividing wall, that is the hostility between us. There's something there, a dividing wall which is keeping people apart. Something that's making it so they're on different sides. And so he looks back at Paul, because remember Paul's story? Paul persecuted early Christians. As he was going to Damascus in order to put them in prison, all of a sudden he experiences this great conversion. And then he has to deal with if they want him on their side. Right? He has to say, okay, I get it, Christians, now I'm with you. Well, what do we do now? There was a wall of hostility brought on by Paul between them, and Paul helped to heal that wall again and again between Christians and those who persecuted them, between Christians and Gentiles, between the things that sometimes don't come together in life. And I'm glad that we're done with all those walls of hostility. There's nothing at all that divides us in America today. Nothing, is there? Our president sent out a tweet yesterday. Yeah, I felt that somewhere too. But I want you to listen to this tweet. The riots in Charlottesville a year ago resulted in senseless death and division. We must come together as a nation. I condemn all types of racism and acts of violence. Peace to all Americans. You know, my primary prayer for our president, you know what it is? That he become presidential. That he be our president. That's presidential, right? And so I want to give him credit for that, because there's so many ways that we have been fighting that wall of hostility that has been set up by our politics, that I want to say, look, here's a chance to maybe begin to tear that wall down. To maybe begin to breach some of those things. Now, it may take holding him accountable to those words, his words. And it's going to take a lot of work. But I want you to know that there's a possibility. In fact, my thing about right now is there's a lot of possibility. And the conflict between us, the dividing walls between us, make it hard for us to see that. Why? Because I see my side of the wall and everything that's over here and all the truth that's here so well, and that wall makes it hard for me to see whatever it is that you're seeing over there. In fact, it encourages me not to see the good in you, because very often that doesn't further my political goals. What I want to have done, what I want to be taken care of, because if I side with you, then it sometimes makes it so that I don't get my way as easily as well. And yet, ultimately, that is what we need. And so we become so easily pessimistic, or we retaliate against each other in these types of spaces. In fact, as I was traveling across the country last week, it was really easy to hear songs like the one from Smashing Pumpkins that says, "The world is a vampire sent to drain. Secret destroyers hold you up to the flame." Or like the one from Nothing More. It says, "I don't know what you had in mind, but here we stand on opposing sides. Let's go to war. We arm ourselves with the wrongs we've done, name them off one by one. Let's go to war." There's a whole lot of "let's go to war" battle cries going out. But I love what Dennis Kucinich said. We have to transport our consciousness of America into the future and imagine that which cannot be imagined. To recreate, to summon new forms from the unknown, to draw forth new structures which spring from higher awareness, a greater understanding of ourselves, our nation, and of the world. I believe we sit at a pivotal spot. Not the only pivotal spot, but a pivotal spot about what will happen next. And we can sit in that spot in a way that moves us forward or takes us backwards. Our movie today is called Invictus, and it stars Nelson Mandela, one of the great prophets of our age, who stood in this type of spot in his country and had to decide what to do next. His people, the majority people in South Africa, who had been oppressed for centuries and himself imprisoned for decades, suddenly gained power. And he found himself in the office of the president, saying, "What now?" And on that first day in office, as he looks around his office, here's what he did.
Brenda, please assemble all the staff. All those who haven't already left.
Right now? All of them?
Yes, please.
Please, Sandra. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to follow me, please. The President would like to speak with you.
Here it comes. Yeah. Who wants the satisfaction of firing us himself?
I'd like you to stay out here.
He's got my demons.
I cannot come to them hiding behind them with guns. Coimmentary. Good morning. How are you this morning? It's good to see you. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Some of you may know who I am. I could not help noticing the empty offices as I came to work this morning, and all of the packing boxes. Now, of course, if you want to leave, that is your right. And if you feel in your heart that you cannot work with your new government, then it is better that you do leave right away. But if you are packing up because you fear that your language or the color of your skin or who you worked for before disqualifies you from working here, I am here to tell you, have no such fear. What is forbade, forbade. The past is the past. We look to the future now. We need your help. We want your help. If you would like to stay, you would be doing your country a great service.
See how remarkable that is? He gained power. And so often when you gain power, like in Rwanda with the Hutu and the Tutsis, you tend to switch what happens. And the persecution that you had received, now you give. He chose differently. He chose to have a different voice, both listening to that voice and speaking that voice. And it's because he was looking to the future. So let's talk the long game for a second. Can I tell you that most of what you've been working for decades is already won? It doesn't always look like it. It doesn't always seem like it. And there's a lot of work to do. It's not finished, the work. But the victory is won. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, they will say to us, why did you wait so long? Why weren't you already moving forward? Why weren't you looking towards the future? I think that where we are headed is inevitable and relatively immediate. But there are people who seem to be standing in our way. There are issues that are there. There are things to overcome. And sometimes we can get so caught up in that overcome in the moment that we forget the long game. And we need to do that work of the moment. But we have to do it in the spirit of what is true. That right now doesn't always seem true. But you guys get it right. Today your reconciling committee is going to be serving you stuff during fellowship hour. Sometimes a reconciling committee in some churches, that's all they do is just do little nice things inside. That's not what your reconciling committee does. Your reconciling committee does the hard work of bringing together amazingly different folks and bringing them to a space. But how many of you came from some place of hurt? Some place of rejection? Some place of pushed out and found a space space. Now, I don't know how to take this poll, but I'll bet if we just ask, there's about, 2 or 3 different churches from the past represented. Maybe a few more. That somehow here have found a space where we can be together, act together, love together. I mean, we even let Presbyterians know.
Shocking.
You guys have done, through the decades of the existence of this church, you have again and again done the hard work of reconciling and drawing people into a space and saying, welcome, you are safe here, you are loved here, we want you here. You have broken down the dividing walls between you. And do you remember when someone broke down the wall that divided you from? And what a gift it was that they gave to you. So that whatever hostility had been aimed to you, you knew that in this place you had a safe space. And that here we were seeing a oneness. I saw a meme this week that had 2 questions from 2 different people. And the first question was, why do you insist on taking the hard road? And the other person answers back, why do you assume I see 2 roads? Why is it that we don't see 2 roads? Because of a dividing wall between us. And I don't see the road that you see so easily because it's hidden between whatever that hostility is, whatever it is that we've erected between us that's making it so we don't even see each other, let alone what it is that we're trying to follow. And when we remove those walls, we open up possibilities, but it takes hard work. Because sometimes the person on the other side of the wall, as quickly as you're taking the bricks off, they seem to be putting them back on. And so you have to call across that wall and say, please help me in taking this wall down. Please help me in loving. Please help me in being in connection. See, you guys have been leaders in that new Christianity, and that's what we need. Not what has been, but like Paul trying to speak to those people he had persecuted, saying, I think I get it now. Can you let me back in? Or like pseudo-Paul, that's trying to solve whatever issues are there in his church, trying to say, how do we move towards what can be? How do we give a message that will resonate 2,000 years later? Well, that's what Ephesians is about. And one of the big questions we have to ask ourselves today, one of the things we've done really well is we've loved the oppressed, the people who have been rejected and pushed away and had been defeated by whatever came before. We loved them well. But how about the oppressors? The ones who hurt us? How well do we love them? Because what is going on in America is not going to be healed just because we love the ones who have been hurt. But when we can figure out how to love those who have hurt, when we do like Nelson Mandela, and somehow figure out how to reach across those walls and say, I see you. You have a place here. Nelson Mandela is a remarkable man, and this movie celebrates the miracle that he was. And he does it in the most remarkable way. He sees what is important on that side of the wall. Even though he doesn't even want to look there. He talks about how when he was in prison, that in that prison, the guards would be listening to the Springboks play. The Springboks are the national rugby team. And the prisoners would, as one, cheer for whoever the Springboks were playing, in order to be against rugby, the Springboks, and white oppression in South Africa. And then Nelson Mandela becomes the president. And the people around him want to say that let's get rid of the Springboks. And so the sports organization, formed completely of blacks in South Africa, stand up and vote the Springboks out. Say they're no longer our national team. And as soon as Nelson Mandela hears that, he gets his secretary and they jump in his car and off they go so he can speak there. And his secretary is going, no, Mandela, this is not a good idea. You're risking your future as our leader, she says. At least do it for something more important than rugby. And he speaks back and says, the day I am afraid to do this is the day I am no longer fit to lead. Mandela, Mandiba, chose to step into their world in order to let them know that their world was larger as well. Because if we don't step beyond the walls between us, that wall defines that smallness for them. And as soon as we step that way, suddenly there's a chance that they can see larger. And so Mandela recruited their captain, Francois, to help him and to bring the team on board and to help them to see what it is that could be. And that's a hard battle as well. The movie starts off on the day that Mandela was released from prison, and starts off by showing a very well-manicured rugby pitch with all white players there, and a fence around it, a big, strong iron fence. And then it goes across the road and shows a dry, dusty soccer field where all the blacks are playing. And that was the gap. That was the wall. And he asked Francois and those players to move across the road and to sit on that soccer field with those little black boys and girls and draw them into a new world. He asked them to step beyond themselves and become something different, and to help others do that as well. And he gave Francois a poem that he had heard in prison. And through those decades of imprisonment, gave him the strength to move forward. And when Francois invites his team to go back to Mandela's jail cell and see where he had been imprisoned, this is what happened.
Now the number on the door, 4664, means he was the 466th prisoner to be in the year 1964. Canada, just the way it was. Come with me.
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from bone to bone, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the dull clutch of circumstance,
I have not winced nor cried aloud under the bludgeonings of fate. My head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet, the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
One of the great prophets of this church, named March Hefty, after last week sent me a link from Great Britain, and it was about a 30-minute link. He just talks about his new book and about the world as it is right now. And he said that one of the things that he's dealing with in that book is called conflict cycles, and we're in a low part of that cycle. They're directly linked to the magnetic cycles between the sun and the earth, between largely regulated by those cycles. And until 2020, we'll be in a low spot. And when magnetic fields are high, we're more cooperative and less aggressive. And when they're low, like now, we tend to be very aggressive. Doesn't mean we have to be in conflict, however, it says. But we're more susceptible to it, and we're more vulnerable to those cycles. But it is also the greatest opportunity for peace if, as he says, when we're in that vulnerable place, when we take the precautions, when we go the extra mile, when we extend the olive branch, when we become very good listeners to our adversaries, that's when we make the greatest breakthroughs of communication. This spot, where over the next few months we're going to go through a primary election and then a general election, where inside of our church we're going to decide questions of sexuality and gender, where we're going to be in conflictual spots. We can do it in order to win, like in Rwanda. Or we can do it in a way where we all move somehow towards the new future God has for us. Braden goes on to talk about Charles Darwin and about how 150 years ago, as America was forming, he talked about evolution. He's a geologist and he believes completely in evolution, but he said one of the conclusions out of that evolutionary speech is not correct. Because our society was being formed as that was being interpreted as being a place of survival of the fittest, where the values of competition, conflict, struggle, and scarcity were embraced. And we continue to be in competition and in conflict and fighting for what we think is scarce. But he asserts, and that science is beginning to assert more and more, that what's true is that it's cooperation that changed it all, not competition. That competition was the norm that kept other species in their place, but what changed our DNA is that we chose to step into a space of cooperation. The only way to create the kind of hate we see in the world today is because the thinking underlying that hate says life has no value. Our job as people who believe in love and life and divine movements in this world is to speak the message that says that's not true. That this life we're living communally is important, and that we can change who we are. Last 2 weeks ago, on a Sunday morning, still being with you, I sat with 2 young ladies who had just gotten back from their honeymoon. And they were glowing. They were glowing with the love they discovered in each other even deeper during that time together. And they were speaking about two words, Imago Dei, image of God. That inside of each one of us, we have Imago Dei. That we were created in the image of God. And they said this, when you see someone, never wish them pain. That's not who we are. If they caused you pain, they must have pain inside. Wish them healing. That's what they need. So as the movie started, that young man who was the man with the gun, who was in charge of Mandela's security crew, steps into his office to try to figure out how to keep Mandela safe. And then there's a knock on the door.
We need more men.
Did you talk to Brenda about it?
Yes, yesterday. I must be chasing with the schedule. Come in, beautiful. What's this?
Mr. Jason Chabalala,
That's me. Am I under arrest?
Captain Fader and team reporting for duty, sir.
What duty?
With a presidential bodyguard we can assign to this office. There are our orders.
The special branch, right?
You'll see that they've been signed.
Well, okay, be assigned. Just wait here. So just take this up.
You look agitated, Jason.
It's because there are 4 special branch cops in my office.
Oh, what did you do?
This area, the presidential bodyguards are there for us and by you.
Ah, yes. These men are special trained by SAS. They have lots of experience. They protected the clerk.
Yes, sir, but it doesn't mean that they have to come.
You asked for more men, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I asked.
When people see me in public, they see my bodyguards. You represent me directly. The Rainbow Nation starts here. Reconciliation starts here.
Reconciliation, sir.
Yes, reconciliation, Jason.
Comrade President, not long ago these guys tried to kill us. Maybe even these 4 guys in my office tried and often succeeded.
Yes, I know. Forgiveness starts here too. Forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. That is why it is such a powerful weapon. Please, Jason. Try.
Please, Jim, try. Please, try. There's a lot of hard work ahead of us. Things that need to change within us and a lot around us. And if we can't do that with the solutions we found, if we can't somehow grasp this love which we've been giving to each other so well and somehow extend it out there so that they can feel it as well, then we've lost reconciliation. We can. We have to try. Tomorrow, the day after, in the primary elections, in the general elections, in the division between our church. If we don't try with this love that we have chosen, this world is doomed. But if we can take the magic we've given to each other and extend